Breaking news. We've protested against Charles and Trump's state visit in London. Corrupt billionaires with posters "Not My King." No for Trump. The streets of London erupted into an electrifying spectacle of resistance today, as thousands of protesters surged into the heart of the city to oppose the controversial state visit of King Charles III and former US President Donald Trump. From the very first light of dawn, crowds carrying placards, banners, and makeshift posters began to gather, transforming the city into a roaring sea of dissent. The chants were deafening, the slogans biting, and the collective mood unmistakable. Anger mixed with determination, resentment fused with defiance, hope colliding with fury. London had not witnessed such a raw display of public frustration in years, and this moment was destined to be etched into the political memory of the nation. From Oxford Circus to Parliament Square, the people marched in unison. They were young, old, students, workers, immigrants, pensioners, and activists. A coalition of voices bound by a shared conviction that neither monarchy nor Trumpism represented the future they wanted for Britain. Union Jacks waved alongside rainbow flags, Palestinian keffiyehs were draped across shoulders, and hand-painted signs captured the mood with unfiltered clarity. Some were witty, others furious, but all spoke to the same truth. There was no welcome for Charles and Trump on the streets of London. Police in high-visibility jackets lined the routes, their presence heavy but careful, mindful of the cameras and reporters swarming the protest. Barricades had been set up near Buckingham Palace, Downing Street, and the Mall, but the energy of the crowd spilled far beyond the confines of designated protest zones. Chants echoed through the streets. "Not my king! Trump go home! We are the people, power to the people." Every shout felt like a hammer blow against the carefully orchestrated spectacle of state pomp and ceremony. For many protesters, King Charles symbolized an outdated, unaccountable institution whose very existence clashed with modern democratic ideals. His wealth, his privilege, his inherited throne, all of it stood in stark contrast to the struggles of ordinary Britons facing rising living costs, unaffordable housing, and crumbling public services. "We are told to tighten our belts while he parades in golden robes," shouted one demonstrator through a megaphone outside Westminster Abbey. "This monarchy does not represent us. We want accountability, not pageantry. He is not my king." The crowd roared in agreement, their chants swelling louder than the church bells overhead. Donald Trump's presence only amplified the anger. For many in Britain, his name was synonymous with division, racism, misogyny, and authoritarianism. Protesters saw his invitation to London as a humiliation, a slap in the face of democratic values. Placards read, "No to fascism" and "Dump Trump." A giant papier-mâché puppet of Trump, painted orange and caricatured with exaggerated features, was carried through the crowd, its grotesque grin sparking both laughter and boos. Some protesters lit flares of red and green smoke, filling the sky with colour as chants of "No for Trump" reverberated across Trafalgar Square. International journalists broadcast live, their microphones capturing both the noise of dissent and the resilience of a movement determined to be heard. Protesters were not merely opposing individuals, but a system of entrenched privilege and power. "This is bigger than Charles, bigger than Trump," explained a young woman from Manchester, clutching a sign that read, "End rule by billionaires." "We are tired of elites who make decisions for us without us. Today we are reclaiming our voices." The timing of the state visit had only heightened tensions. With Britain reeling from economic hardship, public frustration over political corruption, and deepening inequality, the spectacle of King Charles hosting Trump was seen by many as a grotesque celebration of wealth and power at the expense of ordinary people. One banner summed it up starkly. "Corrupt billionaires do not speak for us." Security forces tried to contain the anger, but they could not contain the symbolism. Each chant, each banner, each defiant step was a rejection not just of individuals, but of an entire worldview. As one speaker declared from a makeshift stage outside Parliament, "They want us to bow our heads to crowns and billionaires. But today, London has stood up. Today, we say no." As the march moved deeper into Westminster, the clash between spectacle and dissent grew sharper. On one side, gilded carriages, red carpets, and ceremonial processions attempted to display tradition and dignity. On the other side, the people of Britain, waving placards, chanting at the top of their lungs and refusing to be silenced, sent a clear signal that the pomp of kings and the bravado of Trump had no place in their lives. Outside the gates of Downing Street, protesters gathered in their thousands. The air was thick with chants and the sound of whistles, drums, and megaphones. Handmade posters taped to the iron barricades read, "Abolish the monarchy," and "Trump equals sign hate." One group of students from London School of Economics had created a massive banner stretching across Whitehall with the words, "No crown, no Trump, no tyranny." Their banner became a rallying point, where dozens gathered to chant, clap, and dance in resistance. Among the crowd was an elderly woman, wrapped in a Union Jack scarf, holding a sign that simply said, "Not my king." Reporters asked her why she had come, and her answer was met with applause from nearby demonstrators. "Because I've lived long enough to see this country change, and this is not the change we deserve. We are asked to respect a king we did not choose, and a man who insulted women, minorities, and the very idea of democracy. Enough is enough." Nearby, a group of young activists staged a sit-in, locking arms and chanting, "Power to the people, down with the crown!" Police officers circled them cautiously, wary of escalating tensions, but the mood remained defiant rather than violent. The sheer volume of voices, the constant rhythm of chants, and the diversity of the demonstrators created an atmosphere impossible to ignore. For King Charles and Donald Trump, their joint appearance was meant to symbolize strength, continuity, and international friendship. But the protests told another story, one of alienation, rejection, and profound disillusionment with leadership. Trump's motorcade, moving through London with layers of security, became a focal point of outrage. Protesters lined the roads, booing, waving thumbs down and thrusting placards into the air. The words "No for Trump" seemed to appear everywhere, painted on cardboard, cloth, and even people's faces. Journalists from CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, and Reuters broadcast live updates. Cameras zoomed in on the faces of protesters shouting until their throats ached, capturing the raw passion that filled the streets. The images spread across social media instantly. On Twitter, hashtags like #NotMyKing and #DumpTrumpLondon began trending globally, with millions sharing clips of the protests. TikTok was flooded with short videos of chants, satirical puppets, and people holding signs that mocked both leaders. The digital world amplified the real-world roar, giving the protests an international stage that no amount of palace pageantry could overshadow. Back in Trafalgar Square, an impromptu rally had formed. Speakers climbed onto benches and makeshift platforms to address the surging crowd. "We are here to say that Britain belongs to its people, not to kings, not to billionaires, not to corrupt elites," cried one speaker, a young activist from Birmingham. The crowd erupted with cheers and rhythmic clapping. Another speaker, representing a coalition of trade unions, thundered into a microphone. "Trump came here for legitimacy. Charles brought him here for a show of power. But today Londoners have stripped both of them of that legitimacy. Look around you. Look at this crowd. This is the true Britain." The square responded with a thunderous roar, chants rising again into the chilly afternoon air. Drums pounded, megaphones blared, and the energy reached fever pitch. For every line of ceremony scripted inside palaces and banquet halls, there were 1,000 voices outside, tearing down the illusion of unity and acceptance. What was most striking was the solidarity across causes. Climate activists marched alongside anti-racism campaigners. Feminist groups joined forces with anti-monarchists. Trade unions marched shoulder to shoulder with students and immigrant rights advocates. The coalition was broad, but its message was clear. Both Charles and Trump represented systems of privilege and exploitation that had failed ordinary people. "It's not just about one man or one king," said a protester carrying a giant papier-mâché globe. "It's about rejecting everything they stand for: climate destruction, inequality, racism, corruption. Today we rise against all of it." Meanwhile, police reported that the turnout had surpassed initial expectations. Estimates suggested tens of thousands were spread across central London, making it one of the largest coordinated protests in recent memory. The noise was constant, echoing through the avenues and bouncing off the stone walls of historic landmarks. Tourists stood on the sidelines, some cheering in support, others filming on their phones, astonished at the scale of resistance. Inside the official halls, Charles and Trump attempted to proceed with the itinerary: formal meetings, ceremonial welcomes, and carefully orchestrated press appearances. Yet the muffled roar of the crowd outside could not be ignored. Windows trembled with the sound of chants, and advisers whispered anxiously about the optics of a state visit engulfed in nationwide opposition. Even members of parliament began to comment on social media, some praising the protesters, others condemning the disruption. By early evening, as the sky darkened over London, the protests showed no sign of waning. Bonfires of candles lit up in parts of Westminster, vigils held for victims of policies protesters linked to Trump's presidency, and the monarchy's silence on pressing social issues. Chants turned into songs, with thousands singing protest anthems that echoed against the walls of Parliament. It was clear that this was not a one-day spectacle, but the birth of something larger, a movement demanding a new political order. To all my curious Sussex family, thank you all for watching, and do not forget to subscribe, like, and put a comment. Bye-bye, see you then in the comments section.